I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Jack Frost, Chairperson of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all to the committee meetings this morning, July 6, 2022. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D. headquarters building located at 7330 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D. website after the meeting's conclusion. Safety briefing. I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety and Security, Shane Hunter, to provide a briefing regarding protocol for individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency. Roll call.
Good morning. Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. Here in the M.U.D. boardroom, we are located on the first floor, and our normal entry and egress into this place came from the back of the room. There's also another exit here on this side of the room that we can use at our leisure or in an emergency. It's good to know that outside this door is the common hallway, and in that hallway we'll find the nearest fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and AED. With the location of the AED in mind, a show of hands of who's CPR and AED trained. All right, thank you very much. Should there be a medical emergency this morning, 911 will be contacted from the security desk, and they will escort our public safety partners into this space for treatment. Should we need to leave this room and evacuate this space for any reason, we'll go through the same door and take 2 lefts and meet back up in the parking garage, where we'll have an accountability of everyone's presence. It's also a reminder it is severe weather season, although none is expected today. That hallway through this door is also our severe weather shelter. That concludes the safety briefing.
Roll call.
Bagley?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Friend?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
McGowan?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Kavanaugh?
Here.
2, Open Meetings Act. I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the boardroom. Construction and operations.
Good morning.
Senior Vice President, what is that right?
Yep.
You're fine.
Senior Vice President and Chief Operations Officer Gina Langle will review the capital expenditures.
Good morning. Gina Langle, Senior Vice President and Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 5, you'll find our capital expenditures letter. Of the 8 items, I'll be covering a total of 5 of these items on the letter today. Under system improvements, as you can see, there are 3 items under system improvements. They are in subdivisions 3 and 6, as you can see on the map that is being provided right now. I will discuss 2 of these items. The first item is item number 2, and this is on page 2 for $811,800. It's to install 5,020 feet of 2- and 8-inch gas main in Grover Street from 50th to 60th Streets. And you can see the map there that is up at this time on this. This work is required to eliminate conflicts with proposed grading, paving, and sewer that's being done for a City of Omaha project. This work is not reimbursable since it is in public right-of-way. This steel gas main is 60 to 70 years old, and this work will be done by a district crew. If you look at the picture, you'll see where we have green dashed lines. The work that we'll be doing in this area is to relocate some of the gas meter sets outside so that we can do an uprate in this area to eliminate this medium pressured area in there. So the dashed green lines are where we will be bringing some meters outside. The rest of the the rest of the meter sets that are, sorry, let me rephrase that. Once we have all those meters outside, we will be doing an uprate that will then make that entire area uprated to a 45 PSI pressure. The uprate will allow for us to abandon 3 regulator stations. 2 of those are in conflict with the project itself, and that would save us approximately $250,000 instead of relocating it. So we do this uprate. This will eliminate future maintenance of the regulators, and it will also improve our overall reliability of the gas system out here. One of those regulators is an above-ground regulator station. We will be recovering that and salvaging for reuse at another time. The M.U.D. gas relocation work will begin in July and will be completed before the water main replacement work that is scheduled in joint contracting for this fall. The second item I'm going to cover is item number 3. It is also on page 2. It's for $104,700. The pilot project is to do a condition assessment of 2,500 feet of 6-inch water mains along 48th Street or 48th Avenue from Spring to Martha Streets, and 2,000 feet of 6-inch water mains from 46th Avenue from Bancroft to Francis Streets, and that is now being shown up on the screen. This pilot project will use the HydroSnake electromagnetic inline inspection technology offered by Pipeline Inspection and Condition Analysis Corporation. That's PICA. You've probably heard us talk about that before when we use the C-Snake technology. It is to evaluate the condition of these water mains. The assessment will assess a 6-inch cement line cast iron main, and it was both of these were installed in the 1950s. There have been 13 main breaks in these 2 streets, and the last one was in 2018. This is the same technology, as I mentioned, as the 12-inch C-Snake, but it's a smaller tool that is inserted through fire hydrants. That allows us to have less digging and shutdowns, and it results in a lower cost. This request includes the replacement of 4 obsolete fire hydrants for more reliable insertion and extraction of the tool. The proposed schedule will be in late July to shut down and modify the hydrants and launch and receive the inspection cool and complete the inspection. Each run will take about 6 hours. We have been communicating with the customers and will continue to communicate as we go through the project. Work will be done between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. to minimize the customer impacts. It will take approximately 2 months for us to get an assessment report, and the repair will likely begin in the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023 to reduce the risk of future main breaks. So just for general purposes, it's about $23 per feet to do a HydroSnake inspection cost versus $378 per feet to do a replacement of it. Now, that doesn't include the cost of where we'll go surgically repair different areas of it, but if you can see, it does make a lot of sense for us to continue to do condition assessment and go in and grab the parts where we need to go fix those.
Gina, that sounds really like a great opportunity, great tool. You said 2 months before we get the conditional assessments or whatever.
Correct.
Are you going to come back to the board and tell us how that did?
We do that usually. We can do that at any time, Director McGowan, but we'll also do it when we do our updates of our IR assessment in there. So if there's a desire for us to come back, we can do that. Absolutely.
It's a pilot project.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, under building, plants, and equipments, item number 1 for $605,000. This is a lime grit removal improvements that we're proposing to do at Platte West. On page 2, John Zellers will discuss this project a little later in the bids and materials and contracts letter that he has to present. The manufacturer of lime grit removal system is RDP Technologies. The existing grit removal system at Platte West allows for significant amounts of impurities in the lime and grits to pass through to the lime solution and into the water treatment and residuals handling basins and tank. Since the time Platte West has been in service, this technology has been redesigned, and the lime applications and grit removal system has been greatly improved to address the finer grits. We now use the newly designed system at Florence plant. It's also been used in several other water treatment facilities in the United States. When Mr. Zellers talks about this, he'll be discussing the contract, but this year we expect to spend about $121,000 on this new system, and the remaining money will be spent in 2023 and will be included in the 2023 budget. We do recognize that there's a lot of market volatility of raw materials, manufacturing, shipping, and various indices set forth in the proposal. And we anticipate that there will be adjusted pricing by RDP and that we will have a supplemental CNA that will follow in the future for this. But we wanted to be as transparent as we could with the costs that we know that exist right now. We'll continue to monitor that as we go through and keep you up to date with that. The next item is item number 4 for $280,000. It's customer preference and outage management. This can be found on page 3. To improve the customer experience, the district will implement a solution to manage customer communication preferences and send proactive outbound communications to our customers. This project implements an enterprise management tool that collects, manages, and utilizes preferences about frequency, channel content, interests, and intent for proactive outbound communications. In an outage scenario, customers would be sent an outbound communication based on their preference. So it could be by phone call, text, email, whatever their preferences would be. This will increase customer communications, reduce the number of calls to the call center, and create a more engaged customer base. We really, truly believe that this is going to help with the customer experience, in this. Finally, the last item is item number 6 for $342,000 to replace the large swing lathe in the maintenance machine shop. This lathe was constructed in 1950. It has lost its ability to produce accurate machine work due to its age and its usage. It is extensively used for machining pump shafts, case rings, impeller rings, and various motor repair work. And as well know, for those type of things, it's extremely important to have accurate measurements and machining on it in order to make the equipment run properly. That's all I have. Are there any questions on any of that?
Gina, I have a question not related to any of these particular projects, but just a construction. How is the pump station 156th and Dodge coming?
We've started work on that on there. If I can, I'm going to actually let, when Mr. Skovanek comes up and talks about means and services, I'll ask him to give you a quick update on that as well. Okay?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senior Plant Engineer Chris Thompson, acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates.
Good morning. Chris Thompson, Senior Plant Engineer. I'm going to cover the finals letter, which can be found under tab number 6. This month there are 8 finals. Of those 8 finals, 3 are water development projects, 1 water relocation project, 1 gas infrastructure relocation project, 2 plant projects, and 1 joint contract with the City of Omaha. Items A, F, and H have change orders associated with them, so approving these finals also approves the corresponding change orders. I'd like to briefly highlight 3 of the 8 finals. The first project I would like to highlight is the gas infrastructure replacement project with our gas partner Q3 Contracting, which is item E and can be found on page 2. This is the 5th of 7 projects from the 2021 gas contract, and the final contract amount was significantly under the construction estimates. The 2021 gas contract projects were designed in 2020 and contracts put together at that time. And at the time, we were unsure of all the city's stipulations on how the hard surface restoration would be completed in areas with new paving. The second project I'd like to briefly highlight is the CNG filling station access modifications at the construction center, which is item F and can be found on page 3. The completion of this project allows for larger vehicles such as buses and larger trucks to access the public CNG filling station north of the construction center. This was necessary after the closing of the 54th and L CNG filling station. This project primarily consisted of paving modifications to allow for better access to the public CNG station. And the third and final project I would like to briefly highlight is the joint contract with the City of Omaha, which is item H on page 3. We are continuing our initiative to joint contract with the City of Omaha to save on costs associated with restoration. For the joint contract projects, our water main contractor works under the city's general contractor. With that, are there any questions on the finals?
I have one question. On page 2, item number E, project came in quite a bit under budget there, primarily due to the being installed outside of and rather than under the paving. Next sentence intrigues me. It says, engineering is altering the way projects are estimated, so in the future there won't be such large decreases. What are they changing?
So at the time of estimating those projects, they were designed in 2020. These are 2021 contracted projects. We're getting into areas where there's new paving. And so at the time we were a little unsure on how much paving replacement was going to be needed. You know, it's a combination of a lot of things. We were able to get the main outside of paving whenever we can, obviously, to try to save costs there, and then also minimize potholing and paving. But then when we cross intersections, especially intersections of brand new paving, the city was pretty strong on how much of that paving we would need to replace. Fortunately, we were successful in working with the city and try to reduce that. But when we estimated, we kind of assumed worst case and assumed we would essentially have to repave some intersections or portions of intersections. So it really added a lot of cost.
So it's project by project, what you're saying?
Correct, yep.
Because I read that and say it's altering the way projects are estimated. I thought, well, they're changing the whole concept.
Sure, just how we're estimating for the gas contract. So 2021, there was 7 projects. This is one of 7, and this one's about 5 miles of gas main, so it's a very large area. And so every intersection you kind of have to look at, and honestly, we just overestimated a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you.
Number 3, Vice President of Procurement and Enterprise Services, John Zellers, will now review the bids on materials and contracts.
Good morning. John Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 7. There are several items I will discuss this morning, and the first may be found at the top of page 3. In May of 2020, the district entered a 5-year contract with Sirius for Cisco's WebEx video conferencing solution. During the height of the pandemic, WebEx was used almost exclusively throughout the district for online meetings, which allowed business continuity, communication, and collaboration while implementing and enforcing pandemic protocols. The adoption of WebEx throughout the district was better than originally expected, exceeding the 40 licenses included in the contract with Sirius. WebEx continues to be utilized throughout the district, providing for a solution to meet and collaborate between business groups located at various facilities. Recently, IT worked with both Sirius and Cisco to true up the licenses, in which it was determined that it is in the district's best interest to cancel the existing contract and enter into a new 5-year contract that would include 400 user licenses. This approach will save the district approximately $31,000 over the next 3 years when evaluated against the true-up costs during this time period. Approval to cancel the existing contract and enter into a new 5-year contract with Sirius for WebEx services is recommended. The next item is located about midway on the same page. We received a proposal from RDP Technologies for line grit removal equipment that Ms. Langle discussed earlier. RDP Technology builds the equipment specified for the project. They require a down payment of 20%, which is being requested and recommended for approval today. Final pricing is based on industry indexes, which have been identified in RDP's proposal. Final payment is anticipated next summer after final inspection and acceptance from the district for the equipment. We accepted bids for a security guard and walking path at HQ, in which only 1 bidder responded. The bid from Midwest DCM exceeds the project budget by approximately 25%. We recommend that the bid is rejected, at which time we will reevaluate the project next year. The next item may be found at the top of page 4.
John, on that, I was wondering, what do they do now? It's for security guards walking around here, checking things?
Correct. So the contract that we have with Permar, as part of their responsibility, they're to take frequent walks throughout the facility, both inside and outside. And so this particular trail was going to connect the sidewalk that's out here around the back into the east end of the building. That's also where our evacuation area is in the case of a fire or other means. And so that path will serve not only allow a hard service for the security guards, but also provide for a walking trail as part of our efforts with employee health and wellness. And then also allow for a hard paved service all the way out to the evacuation area.
So right now, the security guards walk on the grounds?
Correct. Yep. So right now in the back, there's a portion that is grass that they
Okay.
walk on. All right. The next item may be found at the top of page 4. We are requesting approval of the purchase of a side dump trailer that will be utilized by construction. In November of 2021, the City of Omaha accepted bids for this type of trailer in which Titan Machinery was the low bidder. Titan Machinery has a trailer available and will honor the city's bid with a $500 inflationary increase. Even with the slight increase, Titan's bid is still less than the city's second low bid. Pricing includes a vibrate option not included in the city's bid that assists with material removal when dumping. Titan's bid is recommended for approval. We received a single bid from Murphy Tractor for 4 small hydraulic breakers to be used with 4 new Kubota R430 tractors we have on order. The purchase of these 4 units will match the 12 we currently have in the fleet and are currently being used by our crews. This purchase will complete a 3-year replacement project for these units. We received bids on several water treatment chemicals. Bid participation for some of the chemicals was not as high as previous years. This is due to several factors that include vendors no longer supplying the material, vendors having their own supply chain issues, and higher than normal demand. The last item I'd like to discuss may be found on page 5. We accepted bids for both Class 250 and Class 400 gas meters, which 2 bids were received. Grubner is the low bidder for both meter classes. However, their lead time pushes the meters to a 2024 delivery date. KGM has confirmed they can meet our 2023 delivery schedule. We are recommending that both bids are accepted, providing pricing and availability of meters for both our 2023 and 2024 demands in this meter classification. And that's all I planned on discussing this morning, but be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, John, just a quick question. It's been referenced a few times this morning already, supply chain issues. We've heard it throughout 2022. Have things gotten better? Are they the same? Have they gotten worse? What is your assessment of the supply chain issue?
My assessment is that they're pretty much the same. I mean, we have seen some ease in some particular materials, but we still have challenges. You've heard about ductile iron pipe probably over the last few months. That still tends to be a challenge for us. Internally, we are making efforts to make sure that everyone's informed and the communication is happening because we continue to have challenges. One of the ones that probably hit us the worst is ERTs. Right now, ERTs have been pushed back quite a bit. We've had to make some changes. We actually had the available material to make those changes, so that was good. But to probably answer your question in probably fewer words than what I've spoken so far is it's kind of all over the board. In some regards, we're finding it easier and we're able to get things in standard lead times. In other regards, it's not. So it's just a continual communication with our vendors. Our purchasing team is doing an outstanding job on that. It's a continual and more deliberate communication internally so that we know what our needs are. We've had our struggles. I anticipate that we'll continue to have our struggles, but I feel that we've been able to meet the needs.
Would you give a similar answer then about your assessment with regard to pricing as well? I mean, have you seen a huge increase in some supplies and not so much in others all over the board, kind of?
Yeah, actually, so for example, chemicals. Some of the chemicals today were about 0% or slightly less than what we paid last year. Others up to 69% increase. The meters, over 100% increase. So, And a lot of that is the raw materials. A lot of it's demand, and a lot of it's transportation. I mean, we are seeing diesel. Well, if you go to the fuel pump, if you have a diesel truck, you probably cry every time you go and fill it up. That's approaching $6 a gallon.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Mark Doyle, President. Director Begley, I want to add a little to that discussion. What has changed is we've been in this position for quite a while now, so our partners, the folks that rely on us to get water pipe, developers, I've had a good discussion with Director Kavanaugh, who has talked to some of the developers, have been experiencing this for a while now. So the awareness and the concern of not being able to get what they need to do what they do is different now. For example, if we can't get ductile iron pipe, it's easy to just say it's simple to just get PVC, but the difference in those two products is it takes 3 times as long to design PVC as to design a project with ductile iron. And I'm going to make sure that Gina and her team and Jeff Skovanik, who will be up soon, can put a little on this so I'm not misspeaking. But we're very in tune with our developers who rely on us, and we're talking and we're doing the best we can, and we think we've risen to the occasion to the best of our ability. But internally, when you see bids like this on meters and things like that that are critical to us completing our mission, we're having a lot of internal discussions about business continuity and the reality of things that we would only kind of wonder about, of not being able to get something that causes us to go into a different mode. So we're having a lot of internal business continuity discussions about, what if we really couldn't get this or that? What are we going to do? So in that regard, it's gotten more concerning because we've lived this way for a while and we've never lived this way before, do you? Sure. So thank you for asking, and Director Kavanaugh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I'm happy to say that our team and the developers that have concerns are in close contact, and we want them to know that we'll meet anytime, anywhere. And when you see that WebEx discussion that we had earlier, even though that's not the end all for everything, we're able to fire up and meet with other people that don't have the time to come to a facility, and we're able to be in higher communication. So I didn't want to steal the thunder on that for later, but it's a topic that we're talking about every day. And you're accepting a higher price for something that we really need. And it's a good recommendation, but I'm glad you called these things out and we talk about them. So anything that well, you can correct me later if I misspoke on any of that. Thank you for asking.
As a follow-up to that, when I read about the meters, ordering 10,000 meters, do we use 10,000 in a year, or are we just trying to stockpile up and get them while we can?
No, we have really purposely tried to manage the way that we purchase materials and we store materials. We don't want to be a part of the problem, which is panic buying, and we all experienced that by toilet paper. And so we take a look at what our usage is. We talk to the operating divisions. Do we use exactly 10,000 each year? No, but it's probably around the 9,000 is what we use each year. Yeah. Now, luckily, the pandemic slowed some things down. So we have probably more in stock now than we normally would, but that's a good thing. That allowed some flexibility in some regards for us to react and meet the needs of our customers.
And when you say slowed down, explain. You're saying on the other side of installations.
Correct. And when I meant slowed down,
yes.
Well, due to the pandemic and some of being able to get into homes and be able to do. Yep. Yeah. So, thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Services and Extensions, Director of Engineering Design, Jeff Skovanik, Main Extensions.
Good morning, Jeff Skovanik, Director of Engineering Design. I will be speaking to you about the main extensions letter this morning behind tab 9. It's a lengthier letter, but thankfully my comments will be brief. The letter includes 7 water main extensions and 1 gas main extension, as you see on the map. And they're really on the western periphery of our system entirely. The of the 7 water main projects, all but 2 of them will also be receiving district gas. The 2 that won't are simply outside our service area. In sum total, we're looking at nearly 800, actually just over 800 platted lots, and almost $6.2 million worth of developer investment this month into extensions. The lone gas main project on the letter this morning, the only reason to mention it is the district is requesting a modest, engineering is requesting a modest district investment of around $13,500. There's a 2-inch gas main abutting that project, and to better serve future demand development in the area, we request to upsize that main from 2 inches to 4 inches. And of note, as I sort of alluded to at the outset, aside from the modest gas main investment request, all of the water main extensions this month are fully developer funded. No district contributions are required. That would be the extent of my comments regarding main extensions, unless you have any questions. And if not, a couple things to maybe try to tidy up. Director McGowan, you asked about the West Dodge pump station. I have plenty of friends here at the district, so I have a lot of folks who are sending me good information, and I'd like to relay that to you. So that West Dodge pump station is certainly more than just a pump station. There's transmission main coming from it. There's transmission main going to it to get into our transmission and distribution system. They are separate projects. The transmission main design is about a quarter installed, with a heavy focus on the area around the pump station so that you can make those tie-ins, those connections. So phase 1 is essentially complete of the transmission main as it abuts up to that pump station itself. The pump station, obviously, it needs to come out of the ground, but before you do that, any utilities, facilities that need to be under the building have to go in first. So that's where the bulk of the effort right now is, in getting some of those underground utilities installed on the site. And then the footings are going to be coming out of the ground. And I think that overall the transmission main is around 25% installed, with phase 1 being adjacent to the pump station being essentially complete. I think we're getting ready to do pressure testing, chlorination, things of that nature. And I think that's the update that I have for you. Be glad to help facilitate answers to any additional questions.
No, I'm just curious because that's been a major pump station that we need for serving out the northwest area of growth. When is that going to be in service? What's the estimated time for completion of the project?
I believe I'm looking in the room, are we looking at 24?
Yeah, I believe it's 24.
Yeah, I believe we're looking at, and I can't tell you right now if it would be ahead of or ahead of peak pumpage in 24 or after. We can certainly get you that information, and there will be just a little bit of conversation around that project itself later in the presentation.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because I remember talking about that, how important that pump station is going to be for our future growth and to serve that area that's growing out there. So.
Yeah, and we will share a little bit of Mr. Koenig will share a little bit of information later in the board meeting on that topic as well for you.
This is a photo of the site, Jeff.
Thanks for that, Jay. Appreciate it. So you can see where they're obviously working on underground facilities that need to be installed before the building comes out of the ground itself.
Have we had any issues with the people who live in the apartments just east of this pump station construction right there?
I'm not aware of any, but I think to give you a better answer to that, we'd want to talk with the inspectors out there, the folks who are boots on the ground, and probably the customer success team to see if
just curious because we talked about that. We bought that land from that church there, and the only thing was that it butts right up against the back of those apartments there.
And I know we're mindful of situations like that. Our customer success team is really proactive, and as long as they have the information they need to make contacts like that. And I can't say that no news is good news, but I think we can look into that just a little bit for you.
Well, that's
I'm not
fine. If you
aware
haven't
that there's
heard-
been any
If you haven't heard anything,
concerns.
that's fine. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of curious, because if you heard of it, it'd probably be pretty loud.
Sure.
Okay.
Mark Doyle again. Director Friend and I had some pretty significant conversation on Friday about an area that is actually the old Bennington water system that we acquired. So we'll continue to have pressure problems, and this one, I think, picked up on next door, or you heard about it, but it's nothing new. We're going to continue to work hard to make, and we knew about it. It's, we send, typically, we'll send Water D out or whoever to make sure that valves aren't shut and those kind of things. But we'll continue to have some pressure problems, and the outage management system that we hope you support will help with that. Being vigilant with social sites like Nextdoor, where people start having conversations, is extremely valuable. But if we do a decent job, but we'll do a better job of making sure that we know where those recurring issue areas are. And it's primarily an irrigation issue, primarily. I mean, it just is.
Correct.
When
Correct. Peak hour.
when everybody's watering and the behaviors are such that it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those sort of things, it's just going to happen. And if we communicate with folks that are interested in changing their behavior, we can mitigate it. Because this isn't going to happen anytime soon. 2024 is a long ways off. We don't know what we'll have. We could have a major drought between whatever it is that's going to happen. I hate to say it, but
Locust, frogs.
But we appreciate that kind of dialogue, and it helps to be able to interject in those conversations and at least be able to explain what's happening. So
I logged on to Nextdoor and told him it was Bagley's area.
that's what I saw that.
So you're the guy on next door causing all the ruckus, huh?
Yeah. I liked your comment too. No.
But I would add that I think that the communication is the key.
It is.
I mean, if people know what's going on, then they anticipate having maybe water pressure issues or something. But when they don't know and they turn on their shower and get little or nothing, then they're concerned and up in arms. So again, communication, thank you.
And it's counterintuitive because we do have ample supply, but it's understandable and
Getting the water to the customers
Yes,
at the
absolutely.
pressure they need.
Yeah, thanks for that update, though.
You bet. Mark, do you
Jeff,
feel?
just to follow up to what Mark was saying too, like, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have all the, he's told us to use our water sprinklers on Tuesdays and Thursdays and everything. Have we talked about any rate design change, having higher rates for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, watering your lawn, and communicate to the customers? Look, you want a cheaper rate? Go on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Have we talked about
I'll
rate
take
design?
this one. That's a great question, great comment. As the board knows, or if you don't know, we've got a conservation rate that's been in effect for a long time, before I ever came here, that, we have a tiered water rate where you kick into that highest tier and your rates change. I would just like to leave that as that's a great comment. Rate design is never done. I don't know if that's the answer, but I appreciate the question, and we do talk about those things. What happens if everybody swings to Tuesday and Thursday? We have the same problem. But I'm just saying that's a good question, and we don't really have an answer for that unless Jeff has one.
I'm not going to hazard it.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Mark, do you, and I would ask the board, would now be a time you'd like a little more conversation, a little more information about supply chain issues related to meeting the demands of water development?
I would
Jason's
defer
standing in the
to
room.
Director Kavanaugh. I've had a lot of, do you want to know any more about the developers in this meeting that we've been speaking with, or?
Well, let me just kind of frame what so my colleagues know what we're talking about. I was asked to sit with a developer through a friend of mine who's an attorney, so I did. I was asked to sit with what I thought was going to be one developer. It turned into two representatives. Just to listen to some of the questions they had. They said they'd already talked to staff here at M.U.D. and thought that their issues are being addressed. But basically it had to do with developers having to pay up front and then not getting the supplies necessary to commence with their development for quite a long time. Meanwhile, the money is sitting with M.U.D., and their time is money, money is time. So they wondered if there was a way that we could do things without having full payment up front, or if we could simultaneously bid ductile iron with PVC at the same time, because if we can't get ductile, then you go with PVC. And if you figure out you can't get ductile, then you have to start the process all over again with PVC. Their issues seemed legitimate, so I wanted to hear from you guys what your thoughts were and what progress you maybe have had talking with these developers.
If I could, I'd take the second question first, because that's the simpler one and certainly more in my wheelhouse. We have, in a lot of conversations and a lot of study throughout the district, I would tell you there's an entire team. It's not just a couple individuals looking at these issues. We've made the decision that for the current period that we're in, we're designing every project that we can design in PVC in that material. The reason being it's a more complicated, it's a longer time investment, it's a different design. Now, what I would say without getting too into the weeds is that if we design it in PVC, we can go to ductile iron very simply. It's literally almost a snap of the finger. It's going to be an easier project to install in the field. So if we make that investment up front, we've taken care of ourselves. If we were designing it in PVC and ductile, we're looking about 3 times the design effort and the time, and we don't think that's a wise investment right now when you have lead times on PVC measured in weeks and lead times on ductile in months and years, fractions or over a year. So we're actually doing a lot of work for our developers once we've had conversation with the developer, with the contractor, with the developer's engineer and plant engineering, our inspectors. If there's support, we'll redesign a project that's already been designed in ductile to PVC, because the redesign effort, the timeline, the change order that would go along with that, we can still get probably that material and get that project started faster than we can right now with the lead times that have happened in ductile. And just a little tidbit of information just to kind of put in perspective that this is not an M.U.D. issue. It's not a regional or even national issue. Part of, I can't tell you how much, but part of the problem that we're having with ductile iron pipe is the fact that the raw material, a lot of that, a significant percentage of that in the world comes from the Ukraine, and you know what's going on there. And so that's the worst possible supply chain impact. So there's things that couldn't have been foreseen, any number of months ago, but we're still, I think, finding good solutions. We're in regular conversation. We've got Metro Omaha Builders Association working with a number of individual developers and engineering consultants. So we're putting good efforts toward it. I think we're making some good positive progress. I think we're doing the right things by the developers and the ratepayers right now to get these projects moving. We absolutely are committed to that, and we're going to remain committed to that. And again, there's a team of individuals and, frankly, a team of divisions and departments at the district working on this basically daily, but certainly formally on a weekly basis regularly.
Now, PVC is nothing really new for us.
It's not. We've been installing it. There's a lot of advantages, but there are very key disadvantages, and it's very flexible, but that also creates problems if you don't install it properly. You can end up with problems as soon as you try to tap services on that, and that's what we're installing most of these mains for, that we can install services. So we don't want to have a lot of main failures soon after the pipe is installed, because you can really kind of bend it and make it do what you want, and that's not a good thing. So the design is very different, and it appears that it's a more flexible material, but that actually works against it in introducing stresses to the pipe. And we want these mains to last generations and centuries, not years and decades.
Is it fair to say ductile is the preference between the two for long-range service?
I don't know that. I think we've been experimenting, piloting it, and we're sort of making a transition. They both have their place. There's, again, advantages and disadvantages, but they are a different design. And the development community, I don't know that they have a preference between the two. They want to know that, you know, I asked you to extend service, get it to us as quickly and cost efficiently as possible. And the fact, though, that they're very different designs, we sort of need to be efficient and cost effective. We sort of need to make a choice and move forward. So if we designed it in PVC, it can go in ductile very simply after the fact.
Okay, thanks. And that was the first part of that issue. The other part was upfront money. I don't know if now's the time to discuss or
I would
whatever
say,
you say, Mark.
My discussions with the team on that topic, which has been a recurring topic, it came up when I was on the board early on, and we had a few directors asking about letters of credit and those sort of things. What I'd like to do is come back with some very factual data about what it is we're holding and really truly how long. If we could do that, maybe take it on as a little more of a detailed analysis and have the Joe's group involved, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to act on anecdotal
Yes.
Stories or comments, but if we have some trends and some hard facts,
Yep.
That's how we should make the decisions. It sounds like you're on it.
Yep, we are, and I want to make sure that whatever we do, we're not putting subsidies on the large customer base on the other side. So there's a real balance there, so.
Tim, make sure I understand it. When you say 20% up front, on all construction projects, what projects are you talking, or were they talking about?
20%? Who said 20?
Well, I thought that's what you said was upfront payments.
I didn't say 20%.
No, the fundamental discussion is the water side of the company is developer driven, and by that, I mean, very simply put, developers pay for development unless we choose to oversize or the things that, like on the gas side you mentioned earlier. The gas side's quite different. We put the money in the ground and we make sure that we get a payback over X amount of years. But the developer side, it's truly developer driven, and they do give us the money to buy the materials as we order them, very simply put. And that's, yeah, there's no percentage, I don't think, that I heard.
It's by project, whatever.
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
they need, and they do have the option, because of these discussions in the past, to what's the term I'm looking for, where they can go and contract their own.
WCD developer
Yeah,
contract.
and that hasn't been what everybody thought it would be, because we still need to design and make sure we inspect, and I may be saying it wrong, but we've tried to manage this and do right by everyone, but I'm pretty sure we're in the right place of where, but we need to prove it, and that's fair. Fair enough?
Letters of credit sound like you might be onto something there, maybe as a solution.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe.
not. Yeah, let us look at that too, because somebody's got to put up the money besides our customers for development.
Is there a difference in the issue between small developers and larger developers? Tim, did you pick up anything? Is it just a universal problem?
I don't know. Like I say, I only talked to 2 people in an hour meeting. Any trends or any industry-wide problems, that wasn't brought up during this. It was only for these folks, and my concern is that it might be a larger trend with all the developers.
Well, just hearing the information, not being any sort of an expert on the inside, but it would seem to me that the larger developers would be prepared for this. They would know, they would anticipate. Sure, they'd like a break, who wouldn't? But on the other hand, it might be the smaller developers that struggle a little more financially, but we don't want to ever be put in a position where the small developer, something happens to their development and we're on the hook for it. That's
Correct.
my 2 cents worth.
No,
Thank you.
That's exactly the point, yes. Yeah, we'll come back with a better, more comprehensive report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. I will give a brief recap of employee counts for June 2021, June 30th. we had 811 regular full-time employees with 4 regular part-time. That totals 815. To end this June, we had 833 regular full-time employees and 3 regular part-time, for a total of 836. We had 9 temporary part-time employees, as well as 12 summer employees at the end of the month. So, with regard to jobs actively in various stages of the job placement process, we have 4 jobs that have a requisition currently routing through the approval process. We have 11 jobs that are posted right now. 3 are internal only, 5 are external only, and 3 are posted both internal and external. We have 9 jobs that are in the application review or interview stages, and we have 4 jobs that have 5 selected candidates going through the hiring process. So that's a little peek at the employee landscape.
Bonnie,
Yes.
while you're going through those numbers, how are we doing on retirements this year? I know we've had some peak of retirements last year and stuff. Are we still seeing the retirements?
Actually, we are not. We've seen fewer retirements so far this year than last year, and so yeah, it is not matching last year's pace yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Behind tab 11, you will find the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 15 employees this month. 8 are OAC employees. Those are regular promotions through the standard posting process. We have also 2 OAC employees that are being promoted under their natural progression within the job family. We also have 5 SPA jobs that are on the letter for promotion. 4 are hourly employees moving to SPA, and 1 is a current SPA employee. And we do not have any ratifications for the month of July. Are there any questions for tab 11? Oh, 10. Okay, thank you. All right. The next tab then is our recommendation for salary approval for the promotion of Masania. Masa is a registered professional engineer and holds a grade 4 water operator license. He has been with the district in engineering roles since May 15th of 2000. Based on his education and experience, Mr. Nia is being promoted from the Director of Infrastructure Integrity to the Vice President Engineering role. In view of the additional responsibilities for that role, a promotional salary increase is recommended as outlined in district policy. Are there any questions on that letter?
Will he still be responsible for the infrastructure? This is just a more responsibility?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Is there a person moving out of this role, or is it a brand-new created role?
Thank you. Yes, after an organizational review, it was decided that our 2 larger divisions there, construction is our largest division. We have created a role for engineering as a vice president, and Mr. O'Brien will remain the vice president of construction. So both will get a dedicated vice president to address both current and long-term strategic goals.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And congratulations to Mr. Nia. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, things being as they are, Masa just happened to be out today, so we'll be sure and have him here next week to say hi to the group. So,
Judicial and Legislative Staff Attorney Justin Cooper will review the proposed sale of surplus property at 4915 Grover Street.
4851. That's correct. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a staff attorney. I'm seeking a board resolution authority to confirm the sale at 4951 Grover. This board declared it surplus on September 1st. We had the property appraised. There were 5 bidders altogether. The highest bid was selected. I want to make one correction that the actual highest bid is $33,500, not $33,000. And I'd ask the board to confirm the sale. Thank you.
Insurance and Pension. Vice President of Accounting Mark Myers will now review the proposed ratification of cyber liability insurance contract renewal.
Good morning, Mark Myers, Vice President of Accounting. I'll be discussing the letter behind tab 13 related to renewal of the cyber insurance policy. You may recall last month I presented several other insurance policies for renewal. At that time, we did not yet have quotes for the cyber insurance, but because that policy was expiring on June 15th, the board granted the president authority to execute renewal of the policy on behalf of the district once the quotes were received. Prior to the expiration date, Aon, our insurance broker, provided a proposal recommending that we renew coverage with our current insurance carrier, AIG. Aon solicited quotes from the market, and 3 carriers provided preliminary, non-binding terms and pricing. Of the 3 quotes, AIG was the lowest in terms of annual premium and also had the most favorable terms when comparing liability limits and retention amounts. As a result, the district executed the agreement with AIG on June 13th, binding coverage for the period June 16th, 2022 through June 15th, 2023. There were no changes in the terms of the policy related to liability limits or retention amounts when compared to the expiring policy, but the annual premium did increase 56% from $21,278 to $33,093. You may be aware the insurance market is very volatile right now with a number of significant cyber events in recent years. And although 56% is a sizable increase, it's lower than what Aon has experienced or witnessed through the market here generally. As of the first quarter of this year, Aon reported average increases in cyber insurance of about 96%. So the 56% is below that amount. I would also note that we did anticipate a pretty significant increase when we prepared the budget, and the budget is sufficient to cover the increase in the cost of this insurance. So with that, management is requesting that the board ratify execution of the cyber insurance policy with AIG for the period June 16th, 2022 through June 15th, 2023, with an annual premium of $33,093.
Mark, I have 2 questions. Has M.U.D. ever made a claim on this insurance?
We have not.
Never made a claim? No.
We first purchased this insurance in 2020, so we've had it a couple of years, but we have not filed any claims on it yet.
Okay, my second question, you say the budget is sufficient to fund the increase. The premium's $33,000. How much did we have in the budget? It's sufficient, but would we?
Yeah, last year's premium was $21,278. We assumed that would actually double in the budget, so we had about $42,000. So, and this will come in at about $33,000, so $9,000 less than what was in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Doyle, President. This is an interesting topic, and we really appreciate your support. You know, a lot of companies are probably just now coming on board with cyber insurance. I personally, since I've been in the IT world more years than I want to admit, did a lot of research and reluctantly recommended it a couple years ago with the team, and Joe and I know we really don't know, all said and done, if you end up having an incident, which we're working very hard, and we will always share in closed session anytime you want, our cyber defense. We don't know, you know, when it comes down to it, if a company that has a breach, which we always see, they start arguing about, have you updated your systems? Have you, you know, it's like any, but we have to have it. We couldn't be sitting here saying we don't even have cyber insurance. I still think the best defense is, you know, vigilance and doing everything we can to protect our perimeter in terms of IT and making sure that our employees are fully aware that you have to really think twice. That's one of the largest threats, to make sure that you think twice before clicking on something. And I'm highly confident we're in a good spot. Never, ever complacent about it, though. So it's the right thing to do. And, you know, if we were starting fresh, we wouldn't be talking about an increase. We'd be saying, well, it's $33,000 a year. We wouldn't think much of it. It's a hefty increase, but I don't think it's going to stop here.
Mark, is there annual training for district employees who utilize a computer regarding protecting against, because they are,
yes.
I go through the training and some of the spam that comes through looks pretty credible.
It's better than it used to be, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yes, there is, and great question. And we do phishing exercises, and that's phishing with the PH. And I would say that the phishing emails that intentionally go out are very, very good. And many have been caught that don't expect to be caught, and it's not getting caught. And our rate on that has been exceptional. So I have to say our employees are paying attention, and that's our largest liability, in my opinion. And I couldn't say more about the employee population and how they're rising to the occasion, but yeah, there's annual training. Great. Yeah, thank you for your support on this.
Mark, what's the limit of liability for this policy from the company?
Due to the sensitive nature of the cyber security issues, it's been recommended that we not share that in the public meetings, but I'd be happy to provide that information afterwards, if that's okay.
See, now isn't that ironic? What kind of an answer to I know. That's how this is. I know.
This probably is a no-brainer, but I got to ask anyway, just for due diligence. Does this company provide or conduct an annual review of all the procedures we have in place for protection, and also any changes from one year to the next to further shore up our defense against cyber hacking and criminality?
I do know the application process is very extensive. There are at least two very extensive questionnaires that are filled out by our IT department, Jeff Breesy, and the Information Security Department. And there's been a lot of follow-up interactions, understanding what controls are in place, what changes we've made, what plans are in place for future enhancements. So they're very aware of what we have, and I think along the way they've provided some input into what things they'd like to see as well.
Nobody on the ground here visiting? It's all done by questionnaire?
That's my understanding.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Vice President of Water Operations Mike Koenig will be reviewing a presentation of the Platte South Water Treatment Plant Capital Improvement Project, followed by the Master Plan for Water System Operation.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Koenig, Vice President of Water Operations. Today I'll be providing a brief overview and summary of both the Platte South Water Treatment Facility Capital Improvement Plan and the Water System Master Plan. So before I get started, I must introduce a couple of the people in the room here. I've got Doug Whitfield, the Director of Platte South. Hello. As well as James Bartles, our water supply engineer. Guys did the heavy lifting. I'm literally just taking the ball at the 1 yard line, and hopefully I don't fumble as I run it in. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Masania. With the Water System Master Plan, he was the initiator of that plan. So sorry he's not here today to let me recognize him, but want to thank the entire team. So about 18 months ago, the district partnered with HDR Engineering for these efforts to begin formalizing the existing improvements, or the existing plans that we had for these facilities, Platte South and our water distribution system. So in doing so, we are provided with a more comprehensive and organizing set of documents to follow. This effort is about asset management and providing a roadmap for the district's present and future operations, management, and board of directors teams to follow. So just to point out, for both the capital improvement plans, the intent is to issue bonds for funding these projects. Also, in anticipation of capital projects, the district staff has inserted placeholders in the 2022 budget, 5-year budget plan, to account for the majority of the costs that I'll be presenting today. So this is, as I mentioned there, recognizing both Doug and James and Masa, it was a significant effort. It involved most of the district's departments and hundreds of various team members throughout the process. And as I present, please keep in mind that these plans are these plans and roadmaps are living documents, so they're intended to be maintained and updated as needs arise. But I'd like to begin with the Platte South Capital Improvement Plan and some of its key components. Next slide. So a brief overview, or I guess a brief agenda of what I'm going to talk about regarding Platte South. I'll give a plant history, a brief overview, and then the capital improvement plan process and some of the costs I'll share as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So you see the line chart that, or the arrow chart here gives a little plant history. So even though the Platte South is more than 50 years young, it was established a full 70 years after the Florence plant. In addition, after that construction and onlining of the plant itself, the arrow chart highlights some of the plant improvements which have taken place over the plant's current lifespan. Next slide. Next slide. So dividing the plant up in a couple of different overview or aerial slides here. The first is the plant overview north. The plant in Wellfield consists of approximately 700 acres. The north portion of the plant, with exception of the ammonia building in this picture, are original to the 1960s build. Like the Platte West plant, the Platte South plant is contained under one roof, or under roof. Next slide. So then on the next aerial view here, we can see the south portion of the plant, with exception of the clear well and then the small storage building on the right. Most of those are newer structures in that overview. Many of which were related to recent regulatory improvements. Next slide. Next slide. So a brief overview of the capital improvements plan process. Kind of highlighting on some of the evaluations performed, and these are just some of the key aspects of it. The plant was studied for any current or potential bottlenecks. We're exploring any low-hanging fruit for capacity improvements should the need arise. We also performed a condition assessment. So looking at all of the plant's components related to architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, and process. That assessment was closely done with the plant maintenance staff, as well as our central maintenance division, and incorporated all the equipment history into those evaluations. One thing to point out is we find, and we do these types of evaluations, that we have a very good maintenance team. We maintain our equipment very well. We prolong its life for quite some time. And kind of teeing up what was discussed in the previous comments from Mr. Doyle and Ms. Langle, even Jeff Skovanek, you're going to hear a lot of those things sprinkled throughout this presentation. So we also evaluated for future flood elevations and impacts of climate change during this study. The process also included any challenges related to the Safe Drinking Water Act and known upcoming EPA regulations. The evaluation team needed to be mindful of how proposed improvements could impact building code, as well as water treatment design standards. And we ultimately were striving to optimize the treatment process and improve processes. We explored multiple alternatives to achieve our desired outcomes. Next slide, please. So just to touch on a few of the recommended improvements, there were 20 total recommended improvements. And the types of improvements included condition improvements, where things were obsolete or beyond or coming to the end of their useful life, operational improvements, and then regulatory triggered improvements. And I'll point out the regulatory improvements. Those are improvements that will be dealt to us by kind of outside of the district's control, based on regulatory conditions. So some of them proposed improvements also encompass more than one type of, some could be both conditional and operational improvements. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the capital improvement costs. We've got a total of $136.3 million in 2022 dollars. Probably the biggest note here, as I mentioned on the previous slide, that the regulatory triggered improvements will only be initiated once the trigger condition is met. Next slide, please. So as you see the next 10 years, how those costs are spread out, timing of the projects are still being evaluated to meet the district's budgetary needs throughout the entire company. Many of the initial projects are related to condition assessment items as critical to the plant operation. An example of that would be the plant's electrical, or the well field's electrical backbone and the electrical service to all the pumps in the well field. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to transition to a brief overview of the Water System Master Plan. Next slide. Brief agenda with the next, or the last portion of the presentation. It's a high-level overview of work completed, the prioritized CIP, and the next steps. Next slide, please. So to start off with, what is a master plan and why do we do it? Master planning is a process of evaluating spatial implications of change on our water system. So you can kind of see from the graphic there, there's several often competing drivers that impact our water system. So master planning involves creating a strategy to address multiple drivers as well as address future uncertainties. And the overall goal of the project is to develop a plan that allows us to appropriately plan for growth while at the same time providing flexibility to adjust as any unplanned events come along. Next slide. As an example, the master plan started by evaluating spatial change of demand. Our service population has grown and is expected to continue to grow through 2050, as you can see from the graphic posted. The red line does represent only the district served area, so you can kind of see we projected we trended the growth from 1970 up to 2022, and then we projected in the blue line all the way out to 2050, and then we adjusted that blue line for the actual district service area. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, the population is growing. And based on a review of our customers and regional trends, the amount of water per person is actually declining. So that's with use of more conservation and fixtures that are installed in newer homes. We talked about irrigation a little bit and those types of trends. The net result is an estimated moderate increase in the average day demand, as well as the maximum day demand, and finally the peak hour demand. Next slide, please. So in this schematic, we're kind of showing that the district operates a complex water system designed to deliver peak demand and adequate pressures. So this is a complex system, and it was evaluated using a hydraulic model to project where levels of service criteria would not be met by 2050 due to growing demands. In these areas, improvements would need to be met, would be needed to meet the level of service criteria. When I say level of service, what we're establishing there are minimum pressures, fire flows, those types of things. And we hit on the West Dodge pump station, and those types of improvements are what keeps that level of service available for our customers. Next slide. So just to touch on the optimization process, HDR subcontracted with a firm that specializes in optimization modeling. The firm's called WCS. That optimization modeling uses a cloud to allow them to run many more scenarios and alternatives than we could traditionally do with our brute force calculations. This allowed our collaborative team to identify a strategy that meets the level of service objectives and the lowest life cycle costs while considering potential future regional customers. Next slide. After completing the optimization modeling, we refined our capital improvements through workshops with our consultants. Then we prioritized those improvements, estimating timing for the improvements, and identified triggers so that the plan can be adapted during implementation. So this is a lot of trigger-based improvements. You know, we don't build it until we see the improvements, or sorry, the growth coming. So key capital improvements in this document include 2 storage reservoirs and pump stations out in the southwest and northwest fringes of the service area. Next slide, please. So looking at the breakdown on this graph of the capital improvement plan, you can see the dollars associated with the 5 phases through 2050. Probably the main things to point out are the 2 west reservoirs and pump stations are projected to be required within the next 10 years. And then you can see also the developer, it's all developer driven with their, the developer contributions. And we roughly estimated that for our information purposes of the presentation at 50% of the total main cost. So those are the contributions that were discussed earlier in the committee meetings. Next slide, please. So the next step is continuous improvement. And I wanted to kind of bullet point and highlight a few of the main things that were plucked out of the continuous improvements portion of the plan. We talk about peak demand management in Zone 3. And that was, I'm feeling like this was kind of teed up in the previous comments that were made, shifting the demand from Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. to save the district and the ratepayers. I mean, there's a potential opportunity here with the demand management by encouraging customers with automatic sprinklers. And we're talking about automatic sprinklers here. And I would just clarify, there was, somebody made a very good comment about we don't want everybody to shift to Tuesday, Thursday, weekend. We want the odd numbered houses to do that. And if we get cooperation in that, then we spread that demand over the entire week. Still sell the same amount of water. The customers, hopefully it's a win-win. So the management of, and then on the second bullet point here, the management of Zone 2 pressure includes the creation of a select few areas of lower pressures to save energy and stress on the system's mains. And then the third and final bullet on this slide is a continued expansion of the direct condition assessment, including programs that were presented earlier in the committee meeting with the PICA, and both the sea snake and the other technologies, and doing proper main assessments so that we're sure that the dollars are being spent on the pipe that is most in need. Next slide. So it brings us to the M.U.D's 2050 vision. And we've referred to the triangle of reliability, over the years here, and that kind of came once Platte West was established, and really that triangle of reliability was more in the treatment realm. Our capacity we had a very good, robust system for capacity, but we wanted to enhance that with our reservoirs and pump stations and transmission mains. Being able to move the water around to where it's needed, where the demand is, where the growth is. And the dark red lines, and they're a little difficult to see, but that's where a lot of the transmissions mains are projected to be. And then you can also note, the kind of the bright blue reservoir is also shown there. And just for reference, you can kind of see that triangle of the 3 plants from top with Florence in green, Platte West on the left side of the map, and then down in the lower right is Platte South. Next slide. So this is a good transition or segue into our potential partnership with Lincoln. I would like to wrap up and provide a brief update on our potential partnership with them. So a little bit of background. In 2019, HDR studied the Lincoln and district interconnection. Preliminary findings indicated that the district could supply this water and recommended the district complete our hydraulic model and incorporate future growth demand projections, which, as our project progress update, that's kind of where we're at. That's what I'm here for today, is to present that update on where we are with that system master plan, and our hydraulic model was completed just earlier last year. So the district treatment plant expansion would likely be needed if that's kind of what our model is telling us. And initially, the base demand from Lincoln would be 5 million gallons per day, with higher demands in the summer months. Next slide, please. So an update from Lincoln's side, they're looking at right now a study. They're doing an internal study on what their second source of water is going to be. They're nearly ready to pin an agreement with a consultant to do that. And Lincoln, in that request for proposals and in that scope of work, Lincoln's identified 5 alternatives for future water supply, and the district is included in 2 of those 5 alternatives. So they're on a rapid schedule, a very aggressive schedule to have that phase 1 completed by January 2023. And if the district selected as the best alternative, a potential connection could be made within the next decade. Next slide, please. So going forward, there are advantages and disadvantages to any major water connection. We'll ensure that whatever we do, it benefits our existing and future customers. The district will continue to work with Lincoln over the next 6 months as they work towards selecting their next water source. And just to ensure you that the district's board and senior management will be communicated with continually during the process, and off-ramps will be available if a partnership is deemed not to be in our customer's best interest. Next slide. So in conclusion, the district and the consultant teams have provided us with 2 well-thought-out roadmaps to follow for our current and future designers and leaders. I'd like to wrap up today with today's presentation with any questions you may have.
Mike, I have a couple questions. Go back to page 19, the graph that you have on page 19. If you could.
Jake, can you queue up that slide for everybody, please?
It shows the average day, maximum day, peak hour.
Yes.
Can you explain maximum day? What is that, like a hot summer day?
Yeah,
it's
primarily.
Just people, it's not the irrigation, it's not the water sprinklers or anything?
Yeah, very, very good question. What drives that is typically the summer irrigation. It drives that maximum day demand. What's probably more, I wouldn't say that's not important to us, but that next line above, that peak hour demand, that's where the rubber hits the road with systems. Making sure that we can provide adequate pressures for those demands that are happening from say 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. when the automatic sprinklers are operating, and it's pretty much now it's exclusively Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And I don't know the answer to this question, but I do want to ask it. That red line, the peak hour demand, is so much higher than maximum day and average day. I understand it, but should we be spending a lot of money to cover that peak hour demand? Is there other ways to do it rather than just have a system capable of meeting that peak hour demand? I don't know the answer. I just got to ask that question.
I think the answer lies within a multi-pronged approach to that. We'll continue to build if the customers ask. And that's with your guidance here. And then there are efforts that we're taking with our customer success team on outreach to irrigation service companies that usually they're the ones that set these for their customers. And the customers may not know, they may not be aware. So it's bringing that awareness up and kind of teaming with partners when we can to try and stave that off a little bit. Does that answer your?
I know I don't want to have customers call and say, hey, I can't get water my lawn, or I can't do this, whatever. But if you look at that graph, I mean, it's just amazing how much higher we have to design for that peak hour. And that's expensive, and it's a lot of our costs. And I don't want to upset the customers, I want to meet their demands, but it just seems like peak hour demand is a huge thing to meet.
Yes, and that's great that you recognize that, because it hits like a freight train every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during the hot summer.
Okay.
This is Mark Doyle again. I'd add just a few comments on Mike's comments earlier about managing customer behaviors. And every year that goes by, I won't say it's easier, but the minds of people are changing. You'll have a kindergartner now telling you to shut off the water. And I mean, it's to be able to manage that peak through customer behavior, and Mike mentions the irrigation companies. We're going to work a lot harder on that, and maybe something like an incentive to change your sprinkler, not necessarily what day you're on. I mean, in a perfect world, if we had half of them running those days and yes, these are a big deal.
We'd be golden if we can get that. I mean, that's nirvana for us, of course. Yeah. And these are estimates. We're going to continue to watch because customer trends are not set in stone. They will ebb and flow with their desires, and we see that trending downward, and we'll adjust as needed.
And over time, there will come a day where managers of this utility and this board have a lot better information at the meter, and that will be very helpful. We'll be able to very proactively say, hey, this 1,000 customers we probably could change. So this is a long-term discussion, and your points are valid. We don't want to design for that peak day come heck or high water. I love using water analogies because a lot of our customers don't water their lawn. They really don't. There's a lot that do not have irrigation systems. So your point's well taken, and that's why we wanted to take a longer look with some of these items, especially the Water Master Plan. I think it's a living document, and it's well done, and I'd like to commend Mike, Gina, and the entire team. It's not just the operations group for bringing this document and institutionalizing what we think as a management team and a board to get ourselves to 2050 and then the year 2100. Well, I had to think about that.
And I'd like to follow up on that because, it's nice seeing this project. It's nice knowing that you're thinking out ahead and everything. We're coming to an end of our Florence improvement plans. Mm-hmm. We spent a lot of money on Florence. Florence is pretty modernized now and up to speed. Now we're looking at, Platte South. And, it's an old plant. It needs to be refurbished. And I like you guys bringing this to the board so we're not surprised. This is a good opportunity to give us the information that's needed so we're not surprised when we come to budget and say, oh, where'd that come from,
Right.
So I do appreciate that. Now, I do have another question, and this may be for Joe Shafford or you, either one. The total cost of the project is $136 million over all those years. We're going to finance it with a bond. What's the timing of the bond? Are we going to finance $136 million and use it as needed? Or how are we going to do that?
Right, and I'll let Mr. Shafford answer that question.
I wanted Mike's a bright guy. He could do
That's
this.
where I would fumble the ball.
He would not, actually. Joe Shafford, Chief Financial Officer. Typically, when you issue tax-exempt bonds, there's a rule around how quickly the funds have to be spent. Typically, it's 85% must be spent within 3 years. So we would break the spending up into 3-year increments, 3 to 4 year increments, so it wouldn't be all at once. It enables you to maybe take advantage of the fact that interest rates, which are trending upward, do tend to stabilize, hopefully, in time. Not that we try to time the market with interest rates, but you take small bites. The other beauty of doing it that way is, as Mike indicated, this is a living document. These numbers are going to change. Also, those are 2022 dollars presented with what's going on with inflation, or perhaps offset by more efficient installation techniques, better, whatever. But you typically take it in 3 to 4 year bites when you bond it.
So are you looking at a bond of 1/4 of 136 is $30 million?
Well,
at some point, are you looking for, here's my question.
Yeah.
You're going to issue a bond in 2023.
So in 2020, the 2022 budget actually has a bond actually it was end of second quarter. We didn't need it yet. And that on the water side is to fund the West Dodge Pump Station, ongoing Florence, and Platte South. Now, the current version of the Platte South Capital Improvement Plan has the spending occurring at a little bit more rapid rate than last year's budget assumed. And the budget had placeholders. Now we have much more precision. So I need to work with Gina, Mike, and the team to see if there's a way we can change the rate at which we're spending to try not to bond. We'd planned to bond about $68, $69 million. It would be more than that in this 3-year view of the spending for Platte South, the way it's the way it's laid out right now. We just need to look to see if there's any ability to defer any of that, because as the board is aware, there's a lot of things coming at us, and we're trying to be very cautious about the bond carrying costs that are part of next year's budget.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I understand anyhow.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. If you got a sort of, I certainly wouldn't have got a sort of. But yeah, just a spoiler alert. You mentioned the Florence CIP. We are actually going to be developing a Platte West CIP here very soon. Now, it will be a rather shortened version of what we've seen with Florence, obviously, because the plant's not nearly as old. But we need to make sure that we're on these.
Well, like I say, I appreciate it, because with Florence, we spent a lot of money and we brought it up to date, and now we're looking at this one. And I appreciate you letting us know, because now with budgets and everything, we can anticipate this is going to be in there. It's something we need to do to keep our facilities modernized.
Very good.
Mike, thanks for the presentation. Regarding the potential partnership with Lincoln, it mentions Lincoln has identified 5 alternatives for future water supply, and the district is included in 2 of those 5 alternatives. Are you aware of what those 2 are? Has Lincoln shared any information with you on those alternatives?
They have.
And can you share that with the board today?
It's just various.
To summarize, basically.
I guess to summarize, it would be looking at different, I guess, rates or capacities that they would be looking from us. So that, and plus, where the actual connection points would be.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
I agree with Jim and that caught my attention too. This Lincoln issue is really interesting. And I don't think they'd be in this position, at least not this quickly, if it hadn't been for the legislature passing the potential Ashland Fun Resort Park that is proposed down there. Excuse me. I think just something I would say comes to my mind with my background is that we'd have to be, and Lincoln especially, really conscientious about the cost. Because if this is going to be a cost that hadn't been anticipated by Lincoln, they really need to go back to the legislature and say, hey, we need some help with this. You've put us in this position. How are we going to work it out? How are we going to work together to get this done? Because I really doubt if either M.U.D. or Lincoln are going to be able to absorb the additional costs, and there's, without a question, going to be a major expense. So
right.
That's what I would give a heads up on.
Yes, thank you.
That was proposed years ago when I was down there, and I believe, Tanya, were you down there too? We kind of laughed it off, frankly. We thought that's a kind of an expense we didn't want to take on at that time, and it was sort of a pie in the sky kind of thing, but apparently this most recent legislature felt differently about it. But it shouldn't be a cost that we're forced to bear or Lincoln's forced to bear while this amusement park is put in place.
Yes, understood. And Lincoln will be working with us to provide the study, the engineer, basically the background study and what the potential impacts could be to our, it's primarily our well fields, and it's very close to Lincoln's well field, and they have federal funds already in place to help them with that, so.
Well, that's all well and good, and I certainly support federal funds, but I would say there's no reason not to go back to the legislature and say, this is a consequence of what you passed, and get something done.
Good point.
Hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, that previous plan covered our well field and our brand-new Platte Water Treatment Center. They were planning on flooding that to create the water park, which was, you know, do I need to say more? Right after we finished it. Wasn't that the plan that was presented, to flood the new area we just built?
Yeah, it was a bit different
That's why people
view.
were laughing.
That's $1 billion just for us.
Any other questions?
Do any board members have any further comments?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have one?
You're good.
It's okay. Got it. Okay. Are there any members of the public in attendance today who would like to address the board? If none, the committee meetings have now concluded. We will reconvene for the regular monthly board meeting in 10 minutes at 9 or 10. Oh.
Yeah, that's what my phone was going off.
I would like to call the meeting to order.
Gavel us in, Jack.
I am Jack Frost, the chairperson of the Metropolitan Utility District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all to the regular monthly board meeting this morning, July 6, 2022. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website after the meeting's conclusion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Friend?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
McGowan?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Kavanaugh?
Here. I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the boardroom. As was announced at previous meetings this past year, the M.U.D board must comply with a statutory requirement under the Open Meetings Act, which limits the number of virtual board meetings to half the total number of board meetings during the course of the calendar year. At this time, there are 4 possible virtual meetings remaining. Once the maximum allowable virtual meeting has been met for the year, a board member may still opt to attend a board meeting virtually, but will not be recorded as present in the meeting minutes and will not be able to participate in meeting discussions or vote on any meeting agenda items. This announcement is solely intended to ensure that this board remains mindful of the statutory limitations. And now for those who wish to participate, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes for the committee meetings and regular board meeting for June 1, 22.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Capital Expenditures, Director Friend.
Thank you. Tab 5, Capital Expenditures, discussed in committee. I move approval is outlined in the memo from Gina Langle dated June 30th.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, Director Friend.
Also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Stephanie Henn dated June 24th.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Bids on materials and contracts, Director Friend.
Also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Sherry Meisinger dated June 24th.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Notice of purchases, Director Friend.
Notices purchases between 25 and 50,000 under tab 8 be placed on file.
Main extensions, Director Friend.
Also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Corey O'Brien dated June 28th.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook. Cook, yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Wage and/or salary increases and ratifications. Director for Bagley.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications as discussed in committee and outlined in Bonnie Savine's memo dated June 23rd, 2022.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Selection of Vice President of Engineering, Director Bagley.
I move for approval of the promotion of Vice President Engineering for Masania from Director of Infrastructure Integrity to Vice President Engineering as discussed in committee and outlined in Ms. Savine's memo dated June 22nd, 2022.
Second.
Discussion.
Congratulations to Masa.
Yes.
Presumably that we will approve.
Yay.
Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Aye.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Proposed sale of surplus property at 4951 Grover Street, Director Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we approve the proposed sale of surplus property located on 4951 Grover Street, along with the accompanying resolution as presented by Mr. Cooper in the committee meetings and as outlined in Mr. Mendenhall's letter to the committee dated June 28, 2022.
Second.
Second. Roll call, sorry.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Aye.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
I'm now moving. Ratification of cyber liability insurance contract renewal. Director Howard.
Thank you, Chairman Frost. I move we approve the ratification of cyber liability insurance contract renewal as presented by Mr. Myers in the committee meetings and as outlined in his letter to the committee dated June 24th, 2022.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Discussion.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Aye.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Other matters of district business for discussion. Now we will hear from Vice President of Gas Operations, Jim Knight, to provide an update on gas pricing.
Good morning, Jim Knight, Vice President of Gas Operations. So far this year, we've seen a lot of variability in the gas market and pricing. Beginning of the year, we were in the mid, $6.50 range. We came out of winter in the $4.50 range, so things were looking pretty good. And then we've had some hot weather in May and June, and then we saw prices get as high as close to $9. Yeah, some pretty big moves. Now in the last month, we've seen almost a 30% drop the other way. So actually we've had some good news. So for July gas prices, they're around $6.20 versus they were like $8.60 the month before. So some moves in the right direction. Some of that can be attributed to storage levels nationally have improved. At one point, they were 18% below the 5-year average. Now they're about 12% below the 5-year average, so they're moving in the right direction. Production is increasing. It's about 4% higher than last year at this time. In fact, natural gas production is at record levels. It's never been this high. The number of rigs drilling for natural gas right now is 50% above last year at this time and 300% above what it was in 2020. There's 900. There was 300 rigs in 2020, and there's close to 900 drilling for natural gas and oil right now. So, but production's up, so is demand. So, I mean, that's what's keeping it in balance. But we're seeing some better prices now, and things are looking better than they were at least just a month ago. Those are just my brief comments I had, and open to any questions.
Jim, what's the strip show for pricing of gas in the winter? What's the market?
For this coming winter, it's around $6.50, $6.60.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's lower than I thought.
It was 6 weeks ago. You probably would have seen a $9 or $10.
Yeah.
It's dropped
Okay.
that much.
So is that factored into when we compute the budget plan for our customers, you know, that come up for review? Is that?
It does get adjusted as we update the
So the
the
people
budget
that
plan.
were adjusted when it was $9 or $10?
I'm not sure when that gets readjusted.
Next year?
It might, yes. Any other questions? Thank you.
Tab 16, President's Performance and Salary Review.
Wait.
Uh,
Were we supposed to go on?
That would be Mark Doyle, President. Director
Yes.
Cook, that would be at the pleasure of the board either
All
way.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment.
No, we have to do this.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I move the
Sure. Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to.
make a motion.
Sure. So the Personnel Committee met in May, and we came to the conclusion, and I've spoken with other members of the board, I'd like to make a motion for the board to approve a 5% increase for Mr. Doyle's salary, broken out as 2.25% for the cost of living and a 2.75% increase in his progression for a total of 5%, retroactive to May 1st. That's my motion.
And I will second that.
Discussion.
I just want to add, Mark, I think you've done a terrific job leading this organization, and hopefully you're being compensated fairly for that. Of course, cost of living is a bit more than 2.5%, but thank you for your leadership.
I want to chime in too with Tim. I think you've done a great job, Mark. I think your leadership in getting the management team in place that you have is a great success story too. So you and your management team do a great job, just like this morning with Platte South, giving us a heads up on that. I think you do a good job. I think one of your strengths are strategic planning and working with your management team. And I just say thank you for your hard work.
And I'd like to say, I really appreciate how available you are. I think you're available 24/7, if I'm right about that. It seems like we can always reach you when we have something that's pressing, we need an answer for. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
I'd like to chime in and thank you for your open communication style, your candor to lead this esteemed organization and institution in our area in this time. I mean, who's doing anything like they did it 3 years ago? Nobody should be, because we're in a new world. And I just want to say how much I appreciate your willingness to learn along with us and change. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for your,
And full agreement on previous discussion.
Okay. And one last Mark. I want to thank you for your leadership, especially, I think, in the 100-plus years of this organization. I don't think there's ever been such a tumultuous time dealing with the pandemic and the supply chain issue and just everything you've dealt with. You've done it with integrity and class and openness with the board, so I appreciate and value your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for your support. I have to tip my hat not just to the management team, but to all the employees of the district. I would say, yes, open and candor, and I appreciate you recognizing that. I feel like I'm the same way internally, and that's not always easy. I have, like we all do, I have some quirks to my personality, and I get really excited about some things. But the challenges we have here are no more apparent. I mean, they're so apparent to me with our distribution system and our asset management planning, and I could go on and on and on. I wouldn't have necessarily known some things that I wouldn't have picked them up when I was on the board because we were busy trying to complete that triangle of reliability that Mike mentioned in his presentation. We have large things to do with organizational development, organizational excellence, and certainly operational and finances and all those things. I want to thank you all for your support on behalf of all the employees, because the risk of showing you things like the Platte South Capital Improvement Plan is I'll use the word, the fear that it elicits on how do we fund these things and make sure that we stay affordable, reliable, and the safest utility we could possibly be. So hats off to all the employees of the district for what they do day in and day out, good weather and bad, and not just the field, the back office, all of them together. It's a great team. I can't say enough about the employees of this utility after now being on the inside for going on 12 years. Doesn't time fly? So I want to thank you all for your support. It is never taken for granted, so thank you very much.
And I just want to advise the board and Mr. Chairman, after we vote on this motion, if you would, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have Mr. Mendenhall and Mr. Schaffert come up to brief the board on another item we discussed in committee with regard to Mr. Doyle's pension. That another motion will be made by me after the briefing by Mr. Mendenhall. But first, Mr. Chair, we can vote on this motion as has been presented and seconded.
Okay. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Aye.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
All right, good morning. Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. Upon Director Bagley's recommendation, I wanted to touch on another issue related to Mr. Doyle's compensation, and I've got my phone friend here in case I screw anything up, and chances are I will. But the district's pension plan is a defined benefit plan. Defined benefit plans are subject to Department of Treasury or IRS regulations. One of those regulations that I'm essentially summarizing here off of the IRS webpage is that a defined benefit plan may not base the allocations or the distributions, the benefit that you would receive for a plan year on compensation exceeding a specific dollar amount. The dollar amount is imposed, and the regulation is 401A17. That dollar limit is typically changed yearly through an IRS notice, so it essentially goes through a COLA process. I believe currently $315,000 is the limitation that a benefit, the compensation that a benefit is based on. So Mr. Doyle's salary currently exceeds, and based upon this last motion, continues to exceed that dollar limit that the IRS has imposed. And so I believe that leads to a subsequent motion that Mr. Bagley Director Bagley will be making. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and I'll make the motion, and if we get a second, we can have discussion from any board member on what Mr. Mendenhall just presented to us. Does that suffice with the board?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion right now. I move to direct management at the time of the president's separation to calculate the value owed to him or her of the benefit calculated under the district's pension plan, but capped pursuant to IRS regulation 401A17.
Second.
Well, who?
Discussion.
Discussion.
What? I don't understand.
I'll invite Mr. Mendenhall and Mr. Schaffer back up.
Yeah, so essentially, we've got a retirement plan that determines what an employee's benefit is. So all of us as employees, IRS says there's a cap on the compensation that you cannot calculate the benefit based on compensation that exceeds a certain amount. And so the IRS is essentially saying our plan cannot calculate Mr. Doyle's benefit above a certain amount. So what I think we're trying to do here is to recognize that there is a limitation, but that Mr. Doyle's retirement or his benefit pursuant to the plan shouldn't be impacted. And so this is a way to make him whole, I guess.
Okay, so this corrects what the IRS won't do?
Effectively, what it does is what would his pension had been were it not for this IRS limitation?
Okay.
Using actuarial mortality tables, it would present value the difference between what he earns in the pension versus what he would have earned were it not for this compensation limit.
So this is a lump sum payment at the end?
Yes. And it's also.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's not out of the pension fund because it can't be. It's out of the district's general fund.
Okay.
But it is offset by, he would have also contributed more to the pension plan were it not for this limitation. It'll be offset by effectively a contribution that buys this benefit on the higher compensation limit.
Okay, so it's not out of the pension fund?
No.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
he'll be putting into the pension fund and other people will,
He puts it up to his limit.
right.
And then to the extent.
Sure.
Yeah, then he pays for this increment. It'll net against the amount coming out of the general fund.
Oh, the general fund, okay, thank you.
So the rules apply to the pension funding, not to what a guy could get on his pension, no matter the source?
There
It's
is a
just the
limit on a
source.
pension benefit, but he doesn't have enough length of service. This relates to the compensation upon which a defined benefit can be calculated.
Okay, all right, I get it now, thanks. I went to Ryan High School. So.
Yeah, well,
We now have a roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Any public comment? Do any board members have any further comments? Is there any member of the public present who would like to address the board? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Frost?
Aye.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Good job, good job.
We are adjourned.